Welcome to the Raiders Training Camp Podcast, presented by SiriusXM. Live from the Intermountain Healthcare Performance Center, here are your hosts, Jesse Merrick and Eddie Paskal.
And we are back for episode 3 of the Raiders Training Camp Podcast, presented by SiriusXM. Eddie Paskal and Jesse Merrick. And Jesse, not a boring stretch for the old Las Vegas Raiders these past couple days, huh?
No, not at all. The pads finally came on today, too, so you got some real football to actually talk about. They went inside, obviously, some good stuff to talk about in this one. But definitely, some intriguing stuff happening on Monday.
Sure.
That I think had us all like, whoa, what?
Yeah, definitely. So we will talk about pads and everything that's gone on in the past 48 hours for good reason, because it's been, this is the next kind of thing circled on the calendar, right? This is what Brandon Bolden said, it's Christmas, right? When the pads go on. But if we go all the way back to Monday, which now feels like a lifetime ago, we get the news that Denzel Good, guard/tackle Denzel Good, officially goes on the reserve retired list, calling it a career. And surprise, I think, is the first emotion that came to mind, at least for me. Like, how did you kind of take hearing that news and seeing that release come through?
Definitely surprised. One of those things where, I think you and I were talking about when the Devontae trade, where were you? What was your reaction? It was words that I can't repeat,
Yeah.
And at first I was like, this can't be real. Like this, so I was like, had to double check. And then I saw that it was, and I'm like, wow, okay. Like for me, it's a big loss for the Raiders. That's a guy that I think many of us all thought, hey, starter, at guard more than likely. So now you're going to be relying a lot more on some younger guys on that right side of the line. And to me, it says, hey, Dylan Parham, step right up, man. This is your opportunity.
Yeah, and before we dive into what this means for the right side of that offensive line, and really the offensive line in general, yesterday being Tuesday, Denzel Good takes to Twitter and released this little statement. Thank you for all you guys' support. It means a lot to see the love from y'all. This is one of the most difficult decisions in my life to make, and I make it wholeheartedly. I need this time to focus on things football. I need this time to focus on things not football. Unfortunately, won't allow me to do. I still love this game, and I feel like I just have plenty left in me, but I just have to shift my time and focus to my family for the time being. Thank you to the Raiders organization, my brothers, and the coaching staff for the support and the understanding. So clearly a decision that he did not make lightly.
Yeah.
It does not seem like a decision that was made on kind of an impulse. Like, this is something that Denzel sat down, he thought about, and figured out what makes the most sense for me and my family. And I know that on a football side, like, certainly a loss to the silver and black, but credit to him for kind of understanding, hey, at times there's things that are more important than playing ball.
Yeah, look, there's so many people that would put their life on the back burner, to continue. And I think it's a good on him to take care of the things that matter most, with family, things like that, whatever it is that he's got going on. Too many people, again, will put that to the side. And we all talk about it, whether it's a mental health thing or just purely getting family involved, like, getting back together. Like, you need to take care of those things. There are things that are bigger than football. And Colton Miller even talked about it, maybe he hopes this is maybe just a kind of a setback, and it's something that at some point he can come back later on down the road when all of those things are taken care of.
Yeah, you never know. Like we talk about all the time, you never know what someone's got going on off the field, good, bad, and somewhere in between, obviously. But yeah, Denzel, a huge loss, and shifting to what this means to the Raiders offensive line now. We came into this the start of training camp with questions. I think fair to say now a few more questions.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. For the coaching staff, probably got to be like, okay, now we start looking at the guys we've gotten here. One guy in particular we've heard and seen a lot from, Lester Cotton. He's a guy that he's kind of been the talk of a lot of the old linemen and many people in general getting a lot of opportunities. You got to imagine that gets ramped up a bit now.
Yeah, and I think what makes this whole thing even more interesting, and it's a benefit to Dave Ziegler and Josh and how they built this team, but we hear the term, and we've joked about it, versatility.
Yeah.
But now you look at all the versatility that these guys on the line have, especially on that right side, you can really, if you're Josh McDaniels, you can really start kind of moving and shifting pieces around to seeing what sticks.
Yeah, you really can start to see that. One guy that in particular, when you talk about the versatility since he's come here, Dylan Parham, their pick this year, he's been playing both center and guard, getting a lot of reps with that. Obviously, as we noted many times, a developmental position. They're trying to do anything and everything they can to get him ready. I think in a perfect world, they probably thought, hey, we don't want to play this kid this year, not because he's not good, just simply to, give him that time. But now maybe that schedule gets bumped up a bit given the news, from Monday. But no doubt the competition really ramps up now between, him and Lester Cotton, as I noted. Also, we're watching the right tackle spot with Leatherwood and Parker. So as you said, there's questions And now I think even more, fair to say, even more questions about what that right side of the line is really going to look like.
And speaking of Brandon Parker, and Brandon Parker, a guy that has worn silver and black for a long time and has played serviceable snaps at right tackle, but you look at the combination of him and Alex Leatherwood, and we're not going to sit here and say that's going to be the right side come week 1 when we take on the Los Angeles Chargers. But the fact that Brandon does have that experience, the fact that Leatherwood has that experience on the inside and playing tackle if need be, it is just such a blessing that the versatility those guys have all of a sudden makes things, kind of clouded in a way, but almost like a good cloudy, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, because look, much better to have guys that, have had experience at multiple spots than all of a sudden it's like, oh, dang, we're trying to fit that, square into a circle hole or, whatever the heck it is, the saying. I just totally botched.
I think we get it,
yeah,
right?
You guys know what I mean. But, having a guy that's able to slide around in multiple guys, specifically on the right side of that line, is huge. To be able to do that because, again, just like I think we were talking, with the receivers and things like that, Devontae noted, guys are learning concepts. The same thing along the offensive line. They're learning concepts, not just a particular role of like, no, I'm only a right guard or I'm only a right tackle or I'm only a center. Knowing those concepts is huge because then, God forbid, things start to happen or a guy unexpectedly retires and boom, you're ready to go. We can throw you in there. There's not as steep of a learning curve.
Yeah, and before we actually talk about pads, because we will get there. I promise everyone, we will get there. We appreciate your patience. But I think in just talking about the offensive line and we heard from Colton Miller and we heard from Brandon Parker, what's today, Wednesday, so we heard from him yesterday. And I think the biggest kind of takeaway, at least for me when I heard both those guys talk, is a self-awareness and an acknowledgement. Like Brandon Parker straight up said, he's like, look, I know that the fans and the media feel some type of way about how the offensive line played last year and the expectations for the group going forward. He goes, look, I'm not immune to that. Like, I see that, I hear that. Now, I think he's made a concerted effort to kind of remove himself from it. But I thought the fact that both him and Colton brought that up, that they kind of hear the noise surrounding this group. I mean, if you're a fan of the silver and black, like, you got to love hearing that, especially this early in camp.
I'd imagine so because it creates that chip on your shoulder, And look, I think a lot of people don't realize or give players credit for what they hear and know. I mean, they see a lot of things, especially on the Raiders. I've noted, a lot of guys, the things that us in the media are saying, they follow along, they get it. I don't think it's something that necessarily affects them, but I think a lot of times with football players, you'll see, they'll ignore a lot of the good, but the bad really sticks out, and they'll use that as a motivator, as that kind of chip on their shoulder, because guys are always looking for that. I heard Vinny telling a story this morning on the radio, was talking about J.J. Watt. Right after he had just gone All-Pro or something like that, saying, or no, it was right after he just got Defensive Player of the Year, saying, where's that chip come from? And he's like, I don't know. I don't have one right now, but you better believe I'll find one. I think that's another scenario like this where they know what the kind of narrative is out there about them, and that a lot of people are saying, this team is only going to go as far as the offensive line does. Well, hey, we'll show you that we're better than a lot of people are giving us credit for.
Yeah, and I think just to kind of put a bow on that is like, the Raiders are not unique in only going as far as their offensive line is going to take them, right? Like the Joe Burrow situation where you have objectively a pretty porous offensive line and you go to the Super Bowl. That's not the rule, right? That's the exception to the rule. So this kind of narrative of, oh, well, if the offensive line can hold up, the offense will be good. Yeah, clearly, if the offensive line holds up, typically good things happen.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, and it's one of those kind of like duh.
Yeah, exactly.
Things. And that's but specifically, I think with an offense like this, it adds even more to the mix there with that because of how many weapons this team has, But also at the end of the day, too, like these guys hear the narrative, there's millions of dollars on the line for these guys. You think they don't put more pressure on themselves than any one of us could or any fan could?
Yeah, motivation, not an issue for I mean, candidly, I don't think motivation is ever an issue for any professional athlete, but in particular when you were talking about the Raiders offensive line. But Jesse, pads.
Yes.
We are here. We have made it. The Raiders strapped on the pads for the very first time this morning at the Intermountain Healthcare Performance Center, and it felt good to hear the thud of pads. I talked to Keelan Cole earlier today, and he was telling me, he goes, you know what, man? He goes, you love having pads, it's, because you feel like you're getting closer to playing real football. And he goes, but that first hit is one that you're like, okay, I'm awake now. Let's go off to camp for real. And it felt good to kind of feel that energy this morning, I should say.
Yeah, you have those jitters. I've been in the situation before where you're like, oh, man, like I haven't gotten the first hit out of the way. Again, you hear that click-clack. Colton Miller even, noted it. You get strapped up, you're ready to roll. And then there's those nerves. Boom, first hit, those are gone. And then you're all of a sudden like, all right, let's play some football. The physicality really comes out. And at the end of the day, like, this is what these guys live for. You know, they talked about it. It's Christmas. You know, the first preseason game, I believe Brandon Bolden said that's New Year's. You know, it's a celebration for them. They get this opportunity to really just get it going and play the physical aspect of it, and honestly see the fruits of their labor on the offseason. You know, these are guys that are training to get bigger, faster, and stronger. Well, now they get to see what all that work translates to onto the field.
And you and I were joking when we were on the field. Like, I felt like the kind of, you know, the catchphrase that get up, stand up, stay up, stay up, stay up. Because, look, at the end of the day, football is a physical game, right? You need to have the pass to kind of ratchet up to the next level, but you don't want anyone getting hurt. The coaches, I think, to their credit, do a fantastic job of making sure they're getting their work in, but they're doing it as safely and, you know, kind of player consciously as they can.
Yeah, I think get up is going to be like the saying of the word of camp for the next 5 days.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah,
100%.
but I think it's inevitable. These guys, again, are competitors. Things are going to get a little chippy. I guarantee you there's going to be some scuffles, you know. That's just the way it is. These are highly competitive men out here playing a game that, you know, they love, you know, and it's got, again, millions of dollars on the line. So I think we're going to see some good physicality out of them, but they're towing that line between also making sure, you know, that they're not, you know, reckless with it. You know, McDaniels talked about they're probably not going to have any true live all the way to the ground sessions, which I think is smart. These are pros. They know how to tackle. They know how to do those things.
You know, in terms of that physicality, and obviously today kind of being that next, check mark on the road or whatever, however we want to call it. What were your kind of big takeaways from day one of pads for the Silver and Black?
And I mean, some guys in particular that really stood out to me. One, and you and I have always talked about this, you know, since we started this pod here, is the guys looked like the guys, you know, those are the big name players, you know, and that's what you want to see out of them. But some guys, just going through my notes that flash, Chris Jones, corner, you know, not necessarily a physical aspect here in this one, but he did a great job cutting off Keelan Cole for interception and one-on-ones. So you get to see that a little bit there. Darian Butler, a guy that shined a lot in team, had the biggest hit of the day on Britton Brown, you know, to really get things going there. The whole team, you know, went nuts on that one. And then they did some goal line blocking drills. That, to me, was exciting. At first, as they were getting set up, I was walking up, and I didn't quite see, you know, how everyone was aligned, and I was like, oh, my gosh, are we going to get Oklahoma drills? Yeah. I was like, this isn't allowed, is it?
In the year of our Lord 2022, probably not.
Yeah, I was like, I didn't think you could do this, and then I got up there. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. We got some goal line blocking drills, which were great. They involved the receivers, the corners, and then on the other side, they had the O-line against the D-line with a running back or a receiver out there catching something in the flat. And then you have to try and block them, or if you're a defender, try and shed the block. Well, John Simpson had a really great rep. And again, when I say these guys are standing out, it's one rep here or there. I mean, they're not doing a ton of time. Guys aren't getting 3, 4, 5 different reps. So this is what stood out to me on their single or double reps that maybe they would get out there. John Simpson, Lester Cotton on the offensive side. Chandler Jones saw him throw somebody aside to get in there to throw in a tackle. And Jonathan Abram did a great job against Mac Hollins as well. Mac stood him up, but Jonathan was able to kind of keep the feet running, throw him aside, and go ahead and make the tackle. So those are 4 guys that stood out to me in those goal line blocking.
You know, just for me, in terms of overall entertainment, the one-on-one battle between Darren Waller and Trayvon Merrick that we saw all morning, I mean, them going one-on-one, I mean, that was a lot of fun to watch, right? And I think we kind of see the progression of Trayvon in year 2, where Trayvon got Darren a few times, but let's not get it twisted, where Darren got him as well. So I think, you know, the cliche of iron sharpening iron, it was really fun and entertaining to watch those guys go head-to-head all morning.
It was, and that's one that, I think today it was more so, exemplified than any other. I don't know why. You and I were standing next to each other, and we were talking about that. And so that's one that, to me, it was like that switch clicked, and I was like, oh, man, I got to pay more attention to this battle between these two. And for Trayvon, what better opportunity than to go against a guy like Darren Waller every day as you improve your coverage in the NFL? I mean, it's only going to get easier after going up against a guy like him. You know, again, there's the games against Kelsey, who's a dog, and Kittle as well, they'll be playing. So that's great opportunities for him to get those reps against a guy like that.
And I think for me, just the biggest thing was seeing Trayvon just go stride for stride, toe to toe, muscle to muscle with Darren Waller too. I mean, you and I have talked about it a million times, where if you're talking about pure athletes, like pure, oh my God, this guy's bigger, faster, stronger than you, I mean, Darren Waller is the top of that list. Yeah. And for Trayvon, going into year 2, and let's not get it twisted, a very young guy, a guy still very much on the ascent, and he's going stride for stride with number 83, that is what you want to see in late July here at camp.
Yeah, very impressive. I mean, today, and it's not something that I haven't noticed before, but today I had another one of those aha moments watching Darren Waller run routes, and it's you see those receiver skills. He was a former receiver. You see it. I mean, visibly, you're like, man, you watch him compared to any of the other tight ends on this roster, and he's just different the way that he runs those routes. So for a guy like Trayvon, to be able to keep up with him, you noted the size difference as well. Man, I mean, that's the part where it's like, dude, you are able to go and you're high pointing, you're timing your jump well. It's not easy to cover a guy that has you by that kind of inches, So I've been very impressed with what we've seen from him thus far. Year 2, as you noted, trying to make a big jump in here. Again, no better proving ground than against a guy like Waller.
Yeah, and it's not. I think the great thing for Trayvon too is that this is not just going to be a one period thing, a one practice thing. I mean, this team is going to be in training camp for a few more weeks and every day, because we both know that when you shift it to regular season mode, a practice changes pretty dramatically from training camp to the regular season. So for Trayvon to get the opportunity for the next, call it 21, 24 days, to be going toe-to-toe with Darren and learning from Darren and trying to figure out how am I going to be the best version of myself in 2022, incredible opportunity for him.
Yeah, and on top of that, too, this is where they bounce ideas off of each other. Hey, you just beat me on this route. What did you do? They can really start to dive into it and dissect the details of all these different things that will pay dividends come season time.
And we were talking about how easy and how kind of different Darren Waller is, right, in kind of terms of just seeing him run. Like, the dude runs it's just a pretty run, I guess, for lack of a better term. I mean, he just looks like he was born to run. He was born to play tight end in the NFL. Another guy who looks like he was born to catch the football, stop me if you've heard this one before, Davante Adams. I mean, you and I noted several times over the past couple of days that everything that he does just looks easy in the best possible way. And I think that you were talking before we started rolling, I think you put it perfectly, where if you didn't know that he was Davante Adams, there's part of you that think like, oh, is he just like some random dude who doesn't really care and isn't really trying?
Yeah.
But like everything that he does is just seamless.
Which is, it's wild to even say that, or because like it just looks so lackadaisical, not in a bad way.
Yeah.
Just where he looks like he's just kind of, not even in like third, fourth, fifth gear. He's just kind of cruising along and makes everything look so smooth, so easy. I asked DeMarcus Robinson about some of the things that he's maybe gathered from Davante with working with him so far. He noted his release. He's famous for that, but also his late hands. And he just throws them out there. I mean, obviously, I know the people listening can't see me doing that, but I mean, it's just literally a casual, flips the hands out there, catches it like it's nothing, And some of them are tough balls to catch, and he just makes it look way too easy.
And there's that one ball that he caught on the far field today, where you and I were both standing there, and he's coming down the sideline, and he's in, I forget who the DB was, but really tight coverage, objectively good thumbs up coverage, and you see him running, doing his thing, and all of a sudden, right on the sideline, to your point, and I'll use the Jesse Merrick sound effect, just boop, the hands come out, last second, boom, right in the breadbasket, and we're off. And it's just, you see, I know that we made such a big deal, and I think, candidly, some of our media pals made too much of a big deal about the relationship between Derek and Davante, and, they're going to, start right, pick up right where they left off a decade ago.
Yeah.
But I think it is pretty obvious that these are two dudes, and talking about Derek and DC and Davante, who know each other, who know each other's tendencies, who know what to do to make the other person look good. And I think that as we sit here on the first day of practice, so let's not, blow things too out of the water.
Overreact.
I mean, these are two dudes that look very much in sync and ready to rock.
They do. Just the ball placement, where Carr is able to put it on them when they're running, and it's just that little flick of the wrist, and he knows exactly. It's a lot of it too is like being able to gauge the speed and the way that guys run their routes, and that helps as a quarterback with your placement of the ball. And it's very clear that there is an understanding of familiarity there that you don't really always have, with some of these guys. We've seen with some of the other players, not necessarily always with Derek out there, but with the other quarterbacks, the placement's not necessarily there, or there's just something a little off. That's not the case with him and Davante, and it's exciting to watch and see that continue to develop. But man, I as a former receiver, like I nerd out big time watching Davante do these things because it's just fun. And with the late hands thing, as a DB, a lot of times you're sitting there looking. That's your cue of, if you're in man coverage, that's your cue of, all right, here, I'm going to try and bat this ball out of here. Doing it that late, I mean, that is massive. And also, I mean, you're watching the eyes of him. But, man, if I'd imagine if his eyes match his hands, good luck trying to get a read on him of when you got to throw your hand in there to try and break this thing up.
I mean, it's also a great flex, too.
Yeah.
It's just such an awesome, I know I got you. I got the ball. I don't need to throw him. I'm that good.
Yeah.
Where I just know exactly that millisecond. I have the timing down so precisely that I know exactly when to throw my hands out there. But it's, to use Derek's term that he likes throwing around a lot, it feels like there's just a lot of time on task, right, between DC and Davante. And I know that it hasn't been time on task in an official NFL practice setting, they haven't done it in a football setting really since college. But like the fact that these guys throw together, the fact that there's a relationship there, I mean, it is becoming abundantly clear that these are dudes who know each other.
It is, and it's almost like it stands out, but it doesn't at the same time. You know what I mean?
Yep,
like
100%.
As you're watching practice, it's not like, wow, look at these two. It's just kind of like, hey, they're just doing it. Where there's other things that we watch and we're like, whoa, would you look at that catch or that throw? Like maybe it doesn't stand out because it looks so easy, which is great. If you're a fan of this team, you have to love to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I think we talked about it, it's that level of comfort, right? It's that level of we've been here, we've done it, we know what it looks like, we know how it's supposed to sound. Like it's just going down that checklist, and all of a sudden you're like, yep, 2, 3, 4, yep, there we go, we know what we're doing. So
yeah. And I mean, think about it too, like, whatever it is that you do in any career, if you just have that comfortability with your coworkers, there's not that like shifting through, oh, how do we do this or that, I mean, that's for them has to be so much easier picking up this offense, already knowing, hey, we've got that connection.
100%. And we've given a lot of love to Devontae and Derek, as we should, and really the offense in general. But I think for me, if you say, Eddie, what's your biggest takeaway from the past 2 practices since we last did this show? The DBs, the Raiders DBs, I think have had it back-to-back really, really impressive days out there on the practice field. Yesterday, they were inside for the first time. Today, back out in the beautiful Las Vegas heat. But, dude, I mean, you talk about a group that I think has, and I mean this nicely, has been surprisingly good in the early goings. It's the Raiders defensive backs.
It is. And look, much like the offensive line, a lot of people have had some things to say about the DBs, specifically the corners. But I've been very impressed with what I've seen from that group thus far. Yesterday, a handful of guys coming down with interceptions here and there, pass breakups. One of the fans on Twitter, I tweeted out a video of the safeties working through pass breakup drills, and they said that's something that they haven't ever seen a video of, from practice before. Not that it hasn't necessarily been preached, but they hadn't seen it, and it made me think. I'm like, I don't know if I've necessarily seen like that exact drill. You know what I mean? And so that's one of those things where, okay, it's very clear that it's being preached and it's being, put into work in team drills because they're coming away with a lot of these pass breakups and stuff. And it's not always off of bad throws, So it's been really impressive to see them, get that going. And one thing I'm going to be watching moving forward is Rock Ya-Sin. I mean, his name's Rock Ya-Sin. The dude is rocked up.
Yeah, for sure.
Now that they got the pads on, that physicality factor is going to go up for him. I'm going to be watching that element of his game and how much we do see him right on the receiver's hip and getting in there batting balls down.
Yeah, I mean, friend of the program, Anthony Averett as well. I think we can include in that conversation.
100%.
A guy to see. We're excited to kind of see what he's going to do once the pads come on. But really for me, and look, we've talked about this before. Where defensive back, the position in the NFL is a position of failure.
Yeah.
Right? Like, the nature of the beast is you're going to get God. And look, the Raiders DBs have gotten God a couple times. That's not, an indictment on anyone. But I've been really impressed by just the level of coverage. And look, I know that we're not going 100% yet. I know that we're still kind of ramping up into this. But I've been really pleasantly surprised by just the overall quality that entire group, top to bottom, has brought on these first couple of days of camp.
100%. And it's so cliche to say and whatever, but, you can really tell that they are dialing in on all those details, hand placement, eyes, all those different things. And again, much like with Merrick, like what better group to have in front of you as a receiving core than a one that's got Hunter Renfrow and Devontae Adams. I mean, man, the work that these guys are getting when they go good on good is incredible, and so that's where I think as we continue through camp and also when the Patriots eventually get here and they do joint practices, that's going to be something that's going to be exciting to watch that group and how they continue to work.
And I think you brought up a great observation. We were watching practice on the field earlier. The session where the Raiders and the DBs were going one-on-one, no ball, but really it looked like the Raiders, the wide receivers were just kind of working on routes and the DBs are kind of working on the timing. And I thought that was an interesting kind of way for them to spend part of that practice period. Yeah,
I mean, in all my years watching, covering football, playing, whatever it is, I've never seen a team go through one-on-ones in that sense without a quarterback throwing them the ball. And when you really break it down, you're like, well, hey, that's a great drill for them because, for the DBs, hand placement, position. For the receivers, you continue to work on that separation of your route running. And so it was unique and interesting to see because, again, don't worry about the ball. I just want you to worry about the man in front of you. I think that also is a good, display of the fact that this team is probably going to play a hand chunk of man. We're going to see a lot of man coverage out of them. And that kind of work is great.
100%. And I think we've talked about the offense, we've talked about the defense, and a smile came to my heart today, Jesse, because not only did the specialists go to the podium, which is always a fantastic day, but we did get to see some real kind of live special teams work, right? The hurry up, get out there field goal period, which was great, good to see. My man Carlson, perfect on his field goals today. But we are kind of now, as we are, gosh, what are we, 8 days, 9 days into this?
I think so.
We're north of a week, right? I think.
7 because they reported last Wednesday.
That's right. Oh,
yeah.
Man. What are the days? We've officially gotten to the point where we don't know what day it is. But you kind of feel everything rounding into form in terms of this team really diving in headfirst into camp. And any day I get to see my guys out there doing their thing is a good day.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You were having fun watching that
Loving
one
it.
for sure. But again, good work. Not a little bit of wind involved.
A little bit today.
Yeah.
A little bit today.
A little bit more humidity than anything
Yeah,
else. So,
boy.
Carlson was kicking through like chunks of air, not like it's the South or anything, but man, I mean, it was pretty humid out there. So, I mean, for him, just continuing to get that good work, he noted the fact of, Vegas, a lot of people don't realize is a very windy place.
I had no idea about that before I got here.
And so for him, when they're outside working through stuff, he gets a lot of work, in elements like that, because again, I've been here 3.5 years, and every year I'm always like, man, it's really windy here. So for him, that's good quality work that you don't necessarily get when they go inside.
And let's remember, too, that Daniel kicks inside at Allegiant Stadium. So the days of getting that real good win, like when we were in Oakland, right? I mean, I know that the kickers and the punters would go over to the Coliseum a day, 2 days early just to kind of test the wind conditions, right? Just to get a feel of what things look like and feel like down there on the grass. Mm-hmm. Don't have to worry about that. No. You're in this beautiful palace. But all the same, you're not going to play 17 games indoors. You are going to play games in November, December, and January where weather is an issue. And it's kind of funny to think that you can't really replicate that wind, right? And so the fact that he's going to get some time in the wind, right, to kind of figure out his process and to figure out the mechanics, a net positive for this group.
Yeah, seems like a minute detail, but in the kicking game, when you have a guy like that who is working on the smallest details, because he's obviously at the top of his game, massive thing for him to be able to do.
And you're going to be very grateful when it's December and you're in Kansas City and the winds are swirling at 25, 30 miles an hour, and you're not looking around like, okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to attack this? Like, okay, I know, I came out here, did my pregame. I know the process. We've done this in camp. Like all that stuff helps. It's not sexy, it's not glamorous, but it all matters, right?
It does. Good practice for all those guys. Another thing we got to see too was AJ Cole step into the podium.
Oh yes,
always a great time when AJ steps up to the plate.
And so I was up here today because we had a bunch of things going on in the control room. Big shout out to Peyton and the rest of the crew for making sure that we are here and we are operational. But I was up here during the press conferences, and you were telling me that Mr. Cole, in fine midseason form in terms of media stuff, he had a couple interesting questions that he was posing to me, right?
Yeah, he did. So he said Matt Collins has kind of joined their group, their table for lunch from time to time. And, a lot of guys on football teams, they'll come to the table with some really interesting questions of this or that, or would you rather this or that. One that he said was that the debate that they were all having was, would you rather fight a lion on land or an alligator in the water?
My gut tells me a lion because in the spirit of full transparency, I'm not a great swimmer. I can swim. I need to make that abundantly clear as I look into whatever camera Peyton has on for me. I can swim. I just wouldn't classify myself as a strong swimmer.
Yeah.
What about you?
For me, I'm taking the lion all day because alligators are savages.
Yeah.
And again, it's in the water. Like that's not our natural habitat.
No, certainly not.
Again,
certainly not.
I'm a swimmer, not like ridiculously good. I grew up surfing and stuff, so I'm comfortable in the water.
What a flex, Jesse.
Yeah.
What a flex.
No,
must be nice.
The short hair doesn't show. I used to have some great locks back in the day that would give Carlson them a run for their money.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but So I would rather take the lion on land. I like my chances, my maneuverability. Having said that, that's the king of the jungle right there.
I hope it's like an old lion though.
Yeah,
like a lion a little past his prime. Perhaps someone who retired from being it's a pride for lions, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, perhaps he's retired. He's taken a more secondary role in the pride. He's more focused on the 5-year plan.
Yeah.
I could take that lion, but I mean, king of the jungle, top of the food chain. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I did think this was funny, and we were talking about just kind of what a great rapport our special teams crew has together. And at Raiders tweeted out, is the special teams unit slowly morphing into the same person with the video of AJ? Daniel Carlson responds, not 20 minutes ago, and he goes, yes.
Yes, they slowly are. Yeah. So AJ Cole essentially said, he feels like it was a question about the long hair for Carlson.
Oh, yeah.
And he was saying Carlson and Sieg are slowly kind of morphing into the same person, starting to look alike because they spend so much time together.
Yeah.
And so that's where that one came from, which I thought was great. He said that they're going to be symbiotic twins or something like that. I don't know what the exact word is either. And he even noted, he's like, I probably butchered that, but he's like, we're all going to eventually just be one person. We're going to be, we're not going to be able to distinguish the three of us.
Well, if they all turn into one person, I hope they're all pros and Pro Bowlers
Yes.
and knocking in 95% of their field goals. But Jesse, before we get out of here, so we are back on the field tomorrow, off day Friday, and then we're here through the weekend. This next little stretch for the Raiders before they get ready, and I can't believe I'm saying this, before they get ready to fly to Canton to play their first preseason game. This next, call it 4 or 5 days, what are the big things circled on your calendar, or on your to-do list that you want to see?
Yeah, well, so one, the physicality ramped up a little bit. It was very clear that they were kind of easing into things today, which is normal. You put the pads on.
And I was upset about it. We were talking about this on the side. I was like, let's go, man. We've been here for a weekend. You're like, no, you got to be patient. You can't go crazy.
Coaches kind of hit that reset button when you do it. And Josh even noted the fact that there's multiple firsts, quote-unquote, days of camp, and one of them he noted was the first time you put pads on. It's kind of like restarting camp again. So I think as the days go on, we're going to see the speed, the physicality, the way that they do a lot of these drills ramped up, and I'm looking forward to that. Also, it was kind of tough with where they were. I want to watch more of the offensive and defensive lines because when you put the pads on, that's where the game really gets going.
Yeah, and I agree with you 100%, which is not great for the sake of discourse. But one thing that I really am going to be looking for over this next, so today's Thursday, the next 4 practices, I'm going to have a really keen eye on Max Crosby, Chandler Jones, but maybe a little more specifically the interior of that line.
Yeah.
We've talked about the interior of this line a bunch throughout the offseason. Now with some of the injury situations that you have with that group, and I know it's early in camp, so I'm not here to sound the alarm of, oh boy, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
But all the same, there are opportunities for guys to win jobs. Now that the pads are on, now that the intensity has been ratcheted up a notch, I'm kind of excited to see that group really, end to end, but the interior of the defensive line. Let's see who's standing out. Let's see who's, we talk about all the time. Whose number am I writing down in my notebook? That is the group I'm going to be keeping an eye on before this team goes to Canton.
No, definitely. And, that's massive as well because, again, we noted the questions along this offensive line. The better work they can get on those guys from opposite of them, boom, it's more going to help that group as well. So those are going to be things that are interesting to watch. And, again, there's nobody on this team more excited for pads than the guys in the trenches.
Yeah, and we talk about some of the changing faces on and some of the injury stuff there. Vernon Butler came off the NFI list yesterday, so that would be, earlier today. So he came off the NFI list earlier today, back to practice. So another guy to keep in mind, keep our eyes on as we progress through this next portion of camp, specifically, Ray, specifically on the interior of that defensive line.
Yeah, and that's the thing, too, is guys get healthy. It's great to have them back in there, but great opportunities for these guys that are playing in place of them because that's the reps that are taken away by those guys being injured gets thrown and spread out to the rest of the group. So that helps with your depth, especially moving forward. And as you get ready, like you noted, for a preseason game in like a couple days, it's wild.
Unbelievable. And so next time we talk, which will be early next week, I believe, I think Monday is the next time we're hopping in the studio. As crazy as it is, we are going to look ahead to a preseason game. What a world, Jesse Merrick.
It's going to be crazy.
What a world. But we have a lot to see in between now and then. As I said, a very busy, exciting weekend here in this building. You and I will be here for the duration. I cannot wait. Hopefully we get a little cooler temps. Maybe not cooler, but a little less humidity. How about that?
I'll take the dry heat back any day.
Bring it home.
Manageable. You throw in a little bit of humidity out here in Vegas, and it's brutal.
Put it this way. This is shirt 3 of the day, and we are recording at 12:20 p.m. So we will see you guys next week. Enjoy the weekend. Make sure you lock in, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. We appreciate everyone who's been watching on YouTube. We appreciate everyone that has downloaded the podcast, and we are in your ears using the audio. But it's been a lot of fun. We have a lot more to get to. So a big shout out to Jesse Merrick. A big thank you to Peyton and everyone in the control room. My man Ray on the 1s and 2s, making sure everything sounds good. And we will see you guys on Monday, right, Jesse?
Yes, sir.
On Monday for the next episode of the Raiders Training Camp Podcast presented by SiriusXM.
SiriusXM puts you inside the Raiders Training Camp. Catch all the info on the team, plus your music, talk, comedy, and more. Subscribe now and get your first 3 months free. Be there with the Raiders.